Yes, my name is Samuel Phillips, and I do a few things. I'm an author, and I do photography. I'm into graphic design, and uh, I also do publication of magazine. It's an online magazine called Msingi Africa Magazine, which you can see on screen. And I'm also a father, so that's technically that's just what it is.
And then maybe PD, maybe after a
Yeah.
little bit about you, maybe you could share me how did the two of you got connected, and then both of you became co-authors. And I know you're both Africans. One lives in Kenya, and one was born in South Africa. But one, so anyway, tell us the story of how two powerful people got together for a common cause. Can you? Your
Well,
turn.
thank you so much. Am I coming through okay on the audio?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
thanks so much, Grace, and your colleagues, for inviting me to talk. It's a real pleasure to be here with my colleague Samuel. So my name is PD Lawton, and I am the creator and editor of AfricanAgenda.net, which I've been running now for 10 years. And it's my journal of the transition, what's changing in Africa. And I always try to focus on very positive aspects of things that are taking place that are not covered by the media, that are positive and powerful. And also I delve into history, modern history, and history going back to the Middle Ages. Has anyone ever heard of African history of the Middle Ages? I think probably most people haven't. It's not even considered. So there's so much room. There's so much that needs to be written about, talked about, and it's quite unbelievable, this blanket of silence that has been draped over the African continent. So it's my privilege and my honor to do my best to cover it. I can't remember exactly how I met Samuel and his wife Chioma, but we've been working together for a number of years now, and they have been tremendously supportive. Msingi Africa has been tremendously supportive of my platform, African Agenda. So they very kindly publish my articles on a regular basis. And we have formed a very good and firm friendship, that we share the same image of a future Africa, that needs to come into being as soon as possible. And we recently conspired together, Samuel and I, to co-author a book. And the book is called The Fathers of Pan-Africanism. And the reason for the book is to try and educate and teach the younger generation of Africans about the first leaders post this horrible term independence, and what quality of leadership they were. Is so much to look up to and so much to be proud of. So we've written about them, and we've written about their values and their qualities of leadership, which we believe needs to be passed on to the younger generation so that they can take up the reins and be fully equipped with the knowledge that they have so very much to be proud of. So, yeah.
Anything you want to add on that, Samuel?
Yeah. So basically, when we set out to write the book, where our concern was that there's a whole lot of conversations going on around the world, in Africa, everywhere, and but the thing is, no one seems to be giving attention or paying attention to the younger people, and how that the narrative globally is shifting their mindset towards the direction that they are not supposed to be going. So many of our young people think that the best way to deal with the situations in their countries is to be on the street protesting. But history has proven over time that protest doesn't change anything. It only gives your government room to either come at you very forcefully, and they will legally do it because it's in the Constitution that when protests get out of hand, the government have the right to come in and do whatever they can do. And it gets violent sometimes. So we wrote the book trying to tell the younger people that it's not always about protest. Don't come to the place of unity only because you want to protest what your government is doing that is wrong. You can be united to create systems. You can be united to create new narrative for yourself. You must learn how to be united to create what you want your government to see, or what you want your colleagues in school to see, what you want other people in Africa to see. So it doesn't always have to be, we are protesting because our government made a bad decision, or our government is in bed with the West, or our government is doing this or that. It should be, we can see what the government is doing. It's not accurate, but we are coming together as young people to create what we want to see. And the Constitution gives them the right to do so. So that's one of the reasons why we wrote the book. Stirring the hearts of the young people towards productivity that doesn't necessarily include the false policies that their governments are doing. Because every child out there, every young person out there, have the right of association with younger people like themselves. Meaning they can sit down and create a system that they want to have. They can sit down and create their own stories. It doesn't have to be the story in the mainstream media. So that's one of the reasons why we wrote the book, so that the young people can have something to connect them together for. They don't have to be united because they are fighting their government. They can be united because they are creating change for themselves. That's one of the reasons why we do that.
Thank
you. And also one more thing. We realize that also that there's a whole lot of people globally that don't even understand the situations in Africa, and not from the perspective of negativity. I'm saying now is that everyone seems to think Africa is one collection of continent, or a continent of people that are constantly fighting themselves. They are constantly against themselves. It's some tribal people here and there. You know, the things you see on TV that are not accurate. It's like we have to tell this story in a very different way to show the people that see whatever you see on the media is what the system created in Africa, and they are using the media, which is an arm of the system, to show you that that's what Africa is. But that's not what Africa is. Africa is way different from what you see on media. Because we live here, I was born in Africa, I've never left Africa, and I actually don't even think I want to leave. Because the best place for me to live and thrive is in Africa. No other place. My greener pastor is right here with me. Okay, so we see the things going on in Africa, but the media doesn't want to see what is going on in Africa. So they pick the wrong things that they want the world to see in order to veil the various things that they are doing with their governments in Africa. So it becomes very, 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 very annoying, let me tell you, very annoying that the same person that sabotaged your project is coming to tell you that you're not doing right. It doesn't make sense.
Thanks a lot. That is there. I had some moments while I was still in the Philippines that I have some, encounters when there are some missionaries, whether it will be church missionaries or missionaries for social development, that they seem to understand already the situation in the Philippine ghettos, or in the rural areas, and said they better stay a little longer, then maybe they could understand what kind of solutions we have. So I'm really glad that I was able to have you and PD. So thanks again, and let me pass this opportunity for all the rest of my special co-host Kevin and Drago, and my regular host Hartmut, so that they could have a conversation with you. Kevin?
Well, yes, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. And, Africa is dear to my heart. I've been to Africa several times, but I think you make a very, very good point about refocusing young people and getting them to be focused on what outcomes they want for themselves, for their continent, and for their group. I think that's brilliant. I really would not have looked at it that way, but I got to tell you, I think that's a great thing you're doing, because you both are positioning a narrative that is probably going to be healthier for Africa than the narrative that you were talking about that mainstream media is promoting. But the other thing that I thought was very interesting in both of your openings was the fact that you are keen on promoting positive aspects of what could be, what could Africa be, and what those young people with the roles they can play in Africa. Because I'll give you an example. When people talk about Black history or African history, they talk about them in a separate context, but it's actually all the same. But the thing that I find interesting, when you talk to young Black Americans about Africa, they start at slavery. They don't start at the Mali Empire. They don't start at, you know, the greater parts of Africa, the urbanization of Africa, the commerce of Africa, the science of Africa, the health of Africa. They don't talk about any of that. They just start at slavery. And I tell them, you were not born a slave. You were born a king. You were born a leader. You were born in a nation, or was taken from a nation of a thriving metropolis of great thinkers and great scientists and great families and great human beings. And I think when you start young people on that journey earlier on, like you are, and trying to give them some information that will drive up their perspective of who they are as individuals, I think both of you should be commended for that. I mean, because that's the hard task. And a lot of Africans at home, not abroad, but at home, you know, they're now being manipulated by the West. They're now listening to that dark music of rap music. They're not. I think one of the things we have to do in Africa and all around the world is I think we're going to have to really realign how our children around the world accept Western culture, because it's been a virus around the world. I travel a lot, and so I see these things. Like this was happening in Japan 20 years ago when I was there, and the Japanese say, "Hey, wait a minute, stop. We need you to be focused on your traditional, you know, faith, your traditional values, your traditional morals." And I think what you guys are doing is great. I can't wait to get the book, and I can't wait to continue this conversation, because I'm very well versed on the geopolitics of Africa. So I was excited. I almost missed it because I was in Florida. I had to come back to New Jersey because the storm is there. So I was running in here trying to get myself together before I get on the show with you guys. But I really appreciate that. But do you see that happening, Samuel and PD, right? Is it PD? Do you see that happening? Is there some tension between, you know, what they're learning? You know, I call it the dark side of African and Black culture that's permeating in Africa. I mean, in America right now. Do you see that as a problem? Samuel, anyone can answer that. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So I think what is happening right now is that more young people are beginning to see, they are beginning to see the light. Many of them are beginning to come from behind the veil of what they've learned in school, because more young people are beginning to tell themselves, see, there is a system that has been set up before I was born. There is a system that is trying to make people believe in a certain direction, and there's a system that keeps that certain direction in place. So they are beginning to see now that, see, my parents, they went through this system, see the outcome. They are beginning to see the outcomes of what is happening to their parents. So most of them now begin to pull backward and begin to ask questions, simple questions. Like, for instance, you see a young person ask you, why is my Kenyan shillings measured by the American dollar? Why is the value of my money controlled by the value of someone else's money? Why are we not answering that questions? So most of them now are beginning to come to that place where they are asking critical questions. That why should we start the story of Africa with slavery? We knew about Mansa Musa.
That's right.
We knew about Lalibela in Ethiopia. Those structures in Ethiopia were built for more than 2,000 years ago. They've been there. Castles made of stones. Castles made for kings in the northern part of Ethiopia. They've been there for thousands of years. So how come the narrative has always been from colonialism, from slavery? There was an history before all of these things began. So the young people are beginning to ask questions. Why do we start our historical antecedent from slavery? Why did we start our historical antecedent from colonialism? Why is our textbooks not showing us the deeper things about Africa that we've been made to walk away from? Because right now in Africa, I don't think there are even any countries in Africa that are teaching history in schools. History and art was deliberately removed. They were saying something like, oh, they have to remove history so that the young people don't get agitated over things. They need to be agitated over things. Because until they come to the place where they understand where they are coming from, they can't be able to create systems that take them to where they want to be. So those are the things that are going on now. Young people are asking questions, and it's sad that there are not enough people to give them answers. But I think that's also one of the reasons why we wrote the book. That, see, we may not give you the entire answer that you need, but at least we can give you a snippet that will make you now dig further to getting more answers for yourself. So maybe PD can also help me here.
That's great. That's great. I mean, you know, and the great temple of Luxor says, man, know thyself. And the same thing that's happening there in Africa, it's happening here. You know, I'm always bewildered when I hear parents talk about they're not teaching our kids history in school. And I would always snap back. I said, never learned any history in any school. I said, I went to very good schools. I learned my history at home. You know, I learned my history by going to lecture series. I learned my history talking to some of the greatest minds in the world. I was always actively trying to learn something about who I was and where I came from, but also using that energy to propel myself as an effective human being for my group. And I got to tell you, I'm really shocked by what you just said, that they're not teaching history and art in Africa in the schools. And I think that has a lot to do with colonialism. I think it has a lot to do with the relationship that Africa still has with the West, which I think is very diabolical. I think it has a lot to do with the purse strings that between the IMF and all of the other, you know, institutions that control the flow of capital in Africa. And I think that's one of the things that Gaddafi was working on. But I like what I'm seeing in the old Mali empire, what they're saying to France, and what they're doing is pushing back and saying, look, we want to control our own commerce. We want to control our own resources. I don't know how long that's going to be able to be sustained, but I think they're setting the tone for Africa moving forward. And
exactly. That's true. That's true. Because when you look at what is happening in Burkina Faso with President Ibrahim Traore, he's a young person of about 35 or 36.
Yeah.
And the guy has set a new pattern of how African countries can go. Anybody can make any noise they want to make about, oh, he came in using a coup, it's a military this, it's a military that. But the truth simply is that democracy has not worked in Africa. If democracy has refused to work in Africa because it can be manipulated from servers, it can be manipulated in the polling stations, it can be manipulated by CIA or anybody, then let the people choose what works for them. Because now what Traore is doing now is the first thing he removed from Burkina Faso, one of the first set of things he removed was American military bases. Because the truth is, when these guys come into Africa, they come as corporations, they come as charity organizations, but behind them is the military. So meaning that as they come in to say they are doing investment, the American military is right behind them to support them with the guns. So if you terminate a deal, maybe you have deals together and all of that, you terminate it, the next thing you hear, there's an accident, there's an assassination, there's this. So meaning the business comes into Africa, but at the same time, the military follows. So what the guy did was remove the military base first, cut off the power that gives these corporations the confidence of coming to Africa to do whatever they want to do. They just come, they take resources, they kill people, they do whatever, they create chaos. And then you're wondering what is happening in Africa. You think it's Africans that are fighting. They are not the ones fighting. Someone is instigating the problem, creating a situation that looks like Africans don't know how to govern themselves. But that's not the truth. Because each time you see these things happen, there's someone stirring the pot somewhere. And that's the brilliant thing he has done. Now he has taken back gold mines from the French companies. He says, see, we have the ability to refine our own gold by ourselves. We have the ability to create our own agricultural situation for ourselves. We have the ability to run our own military by ourselves. We have the ability to run our own leadership by ourselves. And it's leading from the front. So the situation has to change. So that's something we are looking for. Can every African nation now emulate what Traore is doing? So he himself, Burkina Faso, Mali, and which was the other one, Niger, they are taking a stand and saying, see, if you guys don't want to support what we are doing, we'll keep going and we'll move forward with it. And they are making beautiful, beautiful policies that should shift their countries into the right direction. Yeah.
And I understand that they're back to speaking. He's teaching them their own language. Again, they're speaking their own language in school. I thought it was fascinating.
Exactly.
I've been following this for some time, and I'm so happy to be a part of this conversation. And the other thing that you were saying that I find very interesting, people don't understand that when imperialism, because imperialism is still alive and well in Africa, and when they cut France off, it had a major impact on their economy. And it's going to continue to have a major impact on their economy. So that's why I'm always a little concerned about, are they going to be able to survive and sustain it? Because, our country and all of the Western countries are good for killing and creating coups to maintain their imperialistic power. So it's just great to see that you guys are having that conversation. I'm just elated. I got to tell you, I'm just happy because nobody's having this conversation. No one's having. Listen, I was just reading a book. I went back to read some of my books on Nkrumah, because Nkrumah was my hero when I was a young kid. And when you talked about, having that kind of conversation about those leaders, right? Those Pan-African leaders, I just was like, okay, something's magical happening on this show today, because that's necessary. I think that people need to understand the importance of Pan-Africanism. And I got to tell you, Samuel, I kind of pushed back on Pan-Africanism when I was younger, because I started analyzing the Pan and the African. Okay, so the African that's in America, we're always fighting for Africans abroad at home, but the African at home never really got together with us so we could create that Pan-African experience or that Pan-African power. But I think the reemergence of this Pan-African narrative, because we're much smarter, is going to be so much helpful.
Yeah, but I think even Pan-Africanism it actually didn't start in Africa. It started in the US.
That's right.
It started as Pan-Negro movement, trying to bridge the gap between the Africans in the continent and Africans in the US and every other places. So you guys we need to find a way to forgive ourselves, because I think we have been deceived for too long, every one of us, because the narrative that we are hearing from the US is conflicting with the narrative that you people are hearing from here. So we need to come to that central place where we now sit ourselves and say, someone has been manipulating our media all this while. Now we need to let off that media and now speak to one another. Let's talk to one another, because in some square, some people will tell you Africans sold African Americans to slavery, but that's another story for another day. So there's a lot of conflicting theories out there that we need to face ourselves and deal with so that we can move forward. PD, please come in.
I can have this conversation with Samuel. Okay, you're right, Samuel.
I'd love to come in on that slavery thing, because that just does my head in. And, Prince Charles, he's now King Charles of the UK. When he went to Commonwealth meeting in Rwanda, it was about 4 or 5 years ago. And he said something remarkable, which we must never, ever forget. He said, you must teach, being you Africans, must teach slavery like the Holocaust. So that's one hell of a damn interesting statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very, very important for the system, for the globalists, the empire, whatever you want to call it, that it maintains this stranglehold of embedding a victim mindset on any African person learning history, because slavery will have that effect. It will have that highly negative. You will naturally hate Europeans, naturally have this huge divide. You were the slavers, we were the slaves. And of course, it's a victim thing, rather than saying, well, hey, the Mansa Musa, the great king of Mali, is the richest man who has ever existed in all of history. And Africa has the most monumental history to offer, as so interesting and so diverse, so brilliant, and of course, spanning all the ages of humanity. So for them to embed this thing of slavery is so important to them, which is why we have to fight it. So I thought that was very interesting. And, I was schooled in South Africa in the 1980s, and I went to a private school, and I was taught something which is still in my head. You know, they put the stuff in your head, and it's very hard to unplug it. But I know that the history of South Africa started in 1497 when the Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama discovered the Bay of Natal. So that's the sum total of my African experience of learning about African history, was a Portuguese explorer in 1487. We learned nothing. We thought, you know, our African culture, that's mud huts, the Zulu king, Shaka, he was a horror story, massacred loads of people. And pretty much everywhere else, there wasn't a hell of a lot going on. So let's rather concentrate on Queen Victoria and Henry VIII, which is what I can tell you all about. And, you know, recently I met the son, a friend of ours lives in Mozambique, and his son came over to visit, and he's just finished school. He'd been schooled in Mozambique at an academy, which is like a private school, and they follow the Cambridge curriculum. So I said to this young person who just finished school, so what did you learn about African history? And he said, well, there isn't much. But he could tell me everything I needed to know about Queen Victoria and Henry VIII. So that's nearly 50 years. And they're still teaching African children in schools in Africa on this particular curriculum about Henry VIII and Queen Victoria. So this young Mozambican knew nothing about the Monomotapa Empire, nothing about the incredible Kilwa Kisiwani citadel, which is just up the coast from where he lives. It's a tragedy, and it's a crime. It's an absolute crime. There's so much we have to rectify. So, yeah.
Well, Petey, who controls the schools in Africa?
Well, Samuel would answer that one, but I know that this school was that the Mozambican friend attended as a private school. It's called an academy, and it's on the Cambridge curriculum, which is the British curriculum. So I wouldn't know how to answer anything apart from that. Samuel probably would.
I actually don't, but I think from what I'm seeing, you know, we must come to the place where we understand that Africa is not just one chunk of a place. Africa is 55 nations, okay, in the continent, 55 sovereign nations in the continent, meaning each of those nations, they all have their own unique way or unique curriculums they use, but it's mostly the Cambridge, the Oxford, whatever they are using. But what I would say is that I think more people, even more schools, are beginning to pull out from the systemic manipulation that is being done using education to begin to teach their children differently. Because, for instance, there's a school in Nairobi here in Kenya that I think is that they call it Afro something. It's technically based on everything Afrocentric, where they teach the children, even from their uniform, their school uniform is African fabric, African designs and all of that. Their books is African, the language they speak, everything in African. That's exactly the same thing that Traore has also done in Burkina Faso. Now he has they've passed the law. All school children must only wear their African attires as uniform. So they are no longer building uniforms like slaves and prisoners and all of that. So they are making their own uniform using their African attires, which is brilliant. So education in Africa is diverse. So some people are even now going towards homeschooling, which I really, really love. I love homeschooling because I don't want to put my child in the situation where he or she has been taught the things that it will take me years to remove from his mind. Because we are in the age of awakening. I should be able to know now that, see, the best thing for my child is for me to teach my child myself. Because the truth is, education is going towards the cliff. Because now there's nothing you want to learn, even in PhD, in whatever you want to learn, that you cannot find on the internet. Education has gotten to the place where it has been overstretched to the point where you can learn anything online. So technically, but I don't know how far the various nations in Africa, what system of education they are using right now, because Africa has diverse of of people. So each one may be using different things. So I only know of the ones around my vicinity.
That's
I
good.
suppose,
Well, you make a good point. You make a good
sorry, I want to say something to the schools, because I suppose we all have the same system, because in the early 20s, it was the Rockefeller Foundation who has created the high school. In the high school system we have all over the world. And the high school system was established in order to produce workers, not thinkers. For example, in the 19th century, the children learned a lot about agriculture. They learned Old Latin, they learned Old Greek, because they should have the ability to understand where they came from. So they had and the same is with Africa. So you have the system, you got the system from the Europeans, or from the West, and they took it. So the system in Africa is the same. You should become good workers or good slavers, and that's it. Yeah. So, and we have to, this re-education is a real global thing, because in Germany it's the same. Yeah.
That's true. So that means, sorry, please go ahead.
No, go ahead, Samuel. I was ready.
So that means now we are having a global movement of parents, brothers, sisters, everybody coming together to now say there is a system that has been pushing us all this while. I think it's time for us to put aside our differences and then push back. Because the truth now, I'm seeing younger people now telling themselves, see, I can create my own clothes. I can create my own software. I can make my own app. I can make my own games, because they are smart in their mind. So they are doing these things. So it's no longer about what is now being taught in school. Because I, for one, I actually don't like school, because it's boring. It's very boring, because I love to be able to, every single thing I do, photography, graphics, authorship, and everything, I learn by myself, seeing people, watching YouTube sometimes, and all of that. So technically, we are in that space where young people and everyone that is ready to make the shift can shift away from the system that has been so oppressive against all of us. And like my brother said, education in that system, that Rockefeller thing, was created to create employees, to create workers, to create slaves of the mind, mental slaves, and all of that. But we need to break out of that matrix and begin to create what we want to see. And that's what is happening in Africa now. Young people are doing this thing, and it's beautiful. I love it when I see them. They create apps, they create fashion line, they create good music. All of that is very beautiful for me, and I love to see it.
Yeah, that's right. Sylvester Stallone said a very good. He said something very interesting. He said a college degree shows the employer only that you can come on time, that you can make a specific quantity of tasks in a specific time, so that he has the impression that you will not quit the job directly. That's it.
Yeah, I actually saw that when he did that in the Tulsa movie. That's really, you saw that. That's great. That was a perfect line, actually. But you know, Samuel, there's a big homeschool movement happening here in this country, and there's a big push to divest and take kids out of these public schools in this country. It's big. And what's happening here in the States is that there's a all-out assault on parent rights in this country. And, you know, we're all pushing back, man. They're taking parents' rights in this country like you cannot believe, from California all the way down. So your struggle is our struggle. We're all trying to make sure that we start to prepare our kids for the future that's ahead of them. I don't care about AI. I don't care about new technology. To prepare these kids to understand who they are as human beings before they even get engaged at that level. Because you have to find the humanity in them before they do that, because they lose a little bit of that. And I think education needs to be focused in that area a lot more, around your morals and principles and your humanity. And then talk about that we're all caretakers of the planet. And you know, what better place to have that discussion in Africa, because everybody feeds off the continent of Africa. So Africa feeds the world. You know, we're the bread basket of the world. We're the mineral basket of the world. We're everything to the world. So it's really interesting that our young people in Africa are starting to figure out their economic power through their ingenuity and through their creativity. And I think that's a positive thing. I got to come to Kenya and sit down with you and see this. I'm very happy. I'm telling you, I don't normally have these conversations online about what's happening in Africa, because nobody wants to have those conversations. And when you mentioned the DRC, I was like, oh my God, somebody freaking finally mentioned what's happening in the Congo, because what's happening in the Congo is horrible. What's happening in Libya right now with the slave trade, horrible. I mean, people don't understand the horror and what imperialism has done in Africa in the last century or two. And I'm just happy to see young people starting to take their own power back. And I think that will save the continent.
And I'm really very surprised. Oh, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
No, I was just gonna add, but yet look what happened in Ethiopia with the GERD, right? And I know both of you know that, PD, you know, because Larry Freeman kept talking about it, the Grand Ethiopian, dam, right? So see, but and the world doesn't even know about that. So
yeah. And the world doesn't know that Ethiopia. Sorry, Sam.
Please go ahead. Go ahead.
The world doesn't know, and Africans don't know that Ethiopia funded the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam on its own. You know, that's the potential. It was Ethiopian engineers who designed it. The entire concept is Ethiopian, and they have self-funded one of the most fantastic infrastructure energy projects on the continent. And so what the West does, what the empire does, it works on Egypt and Sudan and all the neighboring countries to go picking away at Ethiopia's achievement and saying, oh, you're stealing our water, when in fact they're not using the water for irrigation. They're using the water to create electricity. They're not taking any of the water. So, and then that's all, again, the media, nitpicking away at anything positive. I mean, everyone should know about the GERD because it is such an achievement, but they don't. And if they hear anything, it's negative. Oh, Ethiopia's in more trouble there because they're pinching the water from Egypt. And on it goes. But yeah. Sorry, you were going to say something, Samuel.
And you can see the same thing happening in Burkina Faso. I think I was reading an article a few days ago, and the article was talking about what the president is doing, Traore, and how that they created a new national treasury, a new bank that controls their money because they are trying to remove themselves completely from the French economy or from the French money. So the guy said, we are not working with IMF. We won't work with World Bank. We will fund our own development ourselves. And that's amazing. I looked at that situation like, this is beautiful. This is the real meaning of Pan-Africanism, because Pan-Africanism simply means what cuts across Africa. So how can we replicate what Burkina Faso is doing across all of Africa? That's the real meaning of Pan-Africanism. That should be what we should be looking at, so that the Africans in the diaspora, when they see these situations, when they see these events happening in Africa, when they see these beautiful policies that are being made by these young boys in West Africa, this Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, they can now begin to come into the continent to say, how do we support this new movement that is coming up? How do we support the things that you guys are doing? And that's where we need the Africans in the diaspora now. That's where we need everybody to come on board, because the situation, the narrative is changing to the where people can now begin to fund their own national projects. We don't need the IMF. There's been too much trouble on our necks. We don't need the World Bank. Their money is blood money. Their money causes pain. It causes problems, slavery money. So African nations need to begin to fund their own projects by themselves, and they can do it if they decide to do it.
I think. I just want to mention that these countries, which you mentioned right now, for example, they also produce uranium, one of them, I think. And the interesting thing is the price has risen from $20 per kg to $200 per kg. So this is enough. Now they make good money with the commodity. Yeah. And if you understand this, that they have paid before this revolution $20 per kg, this is unbelievable. This is insane. Yeah. No, sorry. PD, please go ahead.
I would like to say, that it should be advised to all African countries with the West. Have nothing to do with the West until Western nations can sort out our problems, and expel our parasites.
Yes.
It's just, it's to have dealings with the West as it stands right now. We are parasite-riddled countries controlled by a City of London, Wall Street. And the alternative, the BRICS countries, has got so much to offer. You look at the programs that China and Russia are running in Africa. And I'm not saying that Africans shouldn't do, as Samuel has just been speaking about, fund their own infrastructure. But as investment partners, Russia has a very sound economy, and it's sound in reality, as opposed to Western countries, America. This is fake money. This is a completely fake economy, not founded on the physical economy, whereas Russia is. So it would be so much of a better move for African countries to work with the BRICS nations and to just turn their back in unison, as Thomas Sankara wanted in 1986, when he gave his famous speech about renouncing the debt. Thomas Sankara, the president of Burkina Faso. And, it turned towards the BRICS countries. But it's much easier said than done. And I just bring up the question of South Africa. And you had the presidency of Jacob Zuma. And Jacob Zuma fought tooth and nail as president for South Africa to have that enviable and honorable position as the S in BRICS. And that was down to Jacob Zuma. And look what happened to Jacob Zuma. He was completely dragged through the mud. They went to the ends of the earth to destroy his reputation and his presidency. So that's what happens, unfortunately. South Africa is still firmly entrenched in the Western model. So as soon as African countries can pull themselves out of the Western model, the better for them.
I was personally involved in such a project. I don't want to offend the president, but a friend of mine, he was in the country and he was directly connected to the family of the president of this country. And we wanted to establish in 2018, 2019, we worked 1.5 years on the financing of a petrochemical facility in this country because they have a lot of oil. And the president wanted to have it. And we tried to fund it. We had the possibility to, if we would get, let's say, a bond from this country, we were able to monetize it. We were able to finance this petrochemical facility. After 1.5 years, I got a record of a telephone call. And in this telephone call, it was very obvious that the people who are who the president was surrounded by, they got the money. They got the money from the Western oil industry for the export of the oil, and they got the money from the Western companies for the import of the products, diesel, jet fuel, gasoline, etc. And for this reason, because of this financial transaction, it was not possible for the president to put a petrochemical facility in his country, so which has brought the country to a complete new economical level. And this, as long as you have this kind of corruption in these countries, it's very difficult to change anything. Yeah, and you see how, let's say, it was a bloody revolution in Mali and Burkina Faso, but you see it from the economical aspect. It's now becoming a free country, also with respect to international trade.
Well, I think that the whole BRICS narrative and the whole organization of BRICS is really put a lot of pressure on the American government in the West itself, because people are starting to see that, I think, PD, you said it really brilliantly, that, the American economy is not built on anything, and, if you look at the Russian economy and the ruble, it's been thriving since all of the sanctions that they were trying to put on Russia. It made Russia a better country economically and socially. So I just find that exciting to hear that. But BRICS is something that I think is going to be important for Africa, because it'll be like a guidepost on what those local economies throughout those 56 countries in Africa could utilize that same power, economic power, by partnering with BRICS. But Sammy, I want to ask a question. The president in Kenya, is he solid with his vision and breaking down all of these walls in Africa? Is he, because I've been getting some discrepancies about him. Is he solid in moving Africa in the direction that you believe is important?
Well, I can see PD laughing.
I just asked that question because I didn't want to step on your foot. I wanted to know, because I follow Africa a lot when I have time to do it, and I'm excited about what's happening, but I'm very skeptical of him because he speaks with two tongues. He's still.
I think. Yeah. I think we all are skeptical, but I wouldn't want to put myself in trouble, so I wouldn't say too much. No, don't do that.
Yeah.
But
let me get in trouble, not you.
Let's hope no special forces will appear behind you.
But I think he is not doing the things he says, and that's not. It's not a good picture, because when you say this is the direction we are going as a country, and then you get to that direction, but you have several other directions that your hands are manipulating, then it gives the people doubt about what you're actually saying. Because if you tell us that there will no longer be extrajudicial killing, or there will no longer be police brutality, there will be free protest. If you don't like what the government is doing, you can have your free protest because the Constitution allows you to do that. And then people get missing, people get abducted and kidnapped during protest, meaning you are doing against the very same thing that you said. So when he goes out there to say his thing, he's a very fluent man. He knows how to speak. He knows how to talk. He can influence your mentality. He can influence your mind. But after speaking, what does he do? What's the action that follows up? Those are the things I don't, like you said, the discrepancies. I really don't understand why that is. Why he says one thing, but what we see is something different. So maybe PD can help me with this, but I really don't know, because I actually don't want to get myself into trouble.
No, let me get in trouble. But I've been noticing that, and the same thing with the president from Ethiopia. He speaks with four tongues, and and I'm listening to him, and I saw him give a lecture some years ago, and he was very interesting to me. He was saying all the right things, and then when I started paying attention to some of his internal politics, I was like, let me watch him a little closer. But I think the discussion they had a couple of years ago about breaking down borders and opening up the continent of Africa, you don't need a passport to go from one country to another country. That would be transformative if that could possibly happen. But I just want to ask about him, because I'm really skeptical of some of the things that he's been doing, and some of the visitors he's been having from the imperialist side of the world come to visit him, and he's been negotiating.
Yes, especially the person called Bill Gates. That one I'm not afraid of him.
That's right.
Especially Bill Gates, because it's annoying to make Africans look like as if we are stupid. We are not. We have some of the smartest people on earth. So why do the things you do and make your people look like as if they can't think?
Yeah.
Because we now understand that each time Bill Gates comes into the country, maybe Kenya or anywhere in Africa, a new policy is made the next day, or within that same week. You find a new policy, a new law that is contrary to the people. So we ask him, why is it that whenever Mr. Bill Gates comes into our country, our president makes a new law or makes a new policy? So the thing is very glaring that someone somewhere is controlling things. For instance, there's a seed law that they are trying to bring into Kenya, and they've been pushing it. They call it the UPOV. UPOV is the Union for Protection of Plant Variety or something. And Bill Gates has been pushing this thing about GMO seeds. Now, the agricultural CS, the secretary, what do they call them? The Secretary of Agriculture in Kenya was saying something that the person that wants the law to be made is, they call him a private member that brought there's a particular clause in the constitution that they want the House of Parliament to change concerning agricultural seeds, protection of seeds, and all of that. So the question is, who is this private person that is giving you people what to do, even though you are the government? But when you look at it clearly, you can point your finger quickly to Bill Gates. It was in Nigeria about 2 weeks ago. They're talking about how to increase nutrition in food for pregnant women. Come on. Don't increase it. Let it be. Because we've seen what you guys can do with vaccines. We've seen what Bill Gates has done with all of this GMO thing. Everything in Africa is becoming like, what are we doing? Because now I'm looking globally. I'm like, even today I was just thinking, I'm like, why is the globalist or these people that are controlling the world, why are they so much interested in death? Why are they so much interested in destruction, in fakeness? Now we have fake food, we have fake humans, we have fake families, we have fake schools, we have, everything is fake. They are killing indigenous knowledge, killing indigenous cultures, killing indigenous seeds and food systems. Why? Really, spirituality of indigenous people have been rubbished and all of that. So the question is, why is this world so bent on creating fakeness everywhere?
Well,
now you remove.
That's a very good statement. That's a very powerful statement. Can I try to answer it quickly? Because they want to be God. They want to be our God. They want to write the DNA of our faith, rewrite the DNA of our faith. That is their focus. They believe that they have the power. They believe they have the control. They believe that they are God. And that is the problem. And people like yourself and people are all around the planet, like for instance, just this Africa in this context. Ghana is an agricultural country, right? Just like majority of Africa in many different pockets, right? And for anybody in Ghana, any leadership in Ghana to be talking about using anything from Bill Gates, seeds or any kind of product from him, is counterproductive to the growth of your country. I mean, everybody's not corrupt in Africa. I just find it fascinating that he's even allowed to fly into those countries and have any kind of conversation after the horror that we've gone through with him over the last 20, 30 years, from India to Africa to United States of America to other parts of the world. I mean, he should not be allowed to go in any country. He is an international criminal. And I cannot believe anybody in Africa
like that
will be talking to him.
Exactly.
They don't value, Samuel, they don't value life because they believe they can give you life and take your life. That's why when you speak out, they change the laws to strip you of your humanity, strip you of your civil rights, strip you of your human rights, and destroy you. My father told me when I was a young man, Samuel, she says, Kevin, when you speak up, this is what happens. Be prepared. They first try to destroy you. And if they can't destroy you, they try to dehumanize you. And if they can't dehumanize you, they criminalize you. And that's happening to all of us around the world that's standing up against the tyranny of our time, like all of our other ancestors did in their time. And we should go back. And you're right. We have to go back and look at how they fought the imperialists of their time. And if we can get young people to understand that they can stand up and they can right the ship and they can bring back unified Africa with one focus to thrive and with purpose, I think we win the day. And I think, Africa might be the place, Samuel, where we can catch that kind of fire. True.
Because like that was last year, my wife and I, we went to visit one of our uncles, and the uncle is a retired medical doctor. He was a former consultant for WHO. So he was very knowledgeable in, I think he's also a neurosurgeon, very, very smart man, but he's old now, about 83 or 84. So I asked him a question. I said, sir, do you know what's the origin of HIV/AIDS? the origin of HIV/AIDS. He looked at me. He said, if I tell you the origin of HIV/AIDS, if I tell you for what reason HIV/AIDS was created, both of us will be dead in 24 hours. That's an old man speaking. He's 84 years old, 83 or 84. He said, if I tell you who created HIV/AIDS and for what purpose it was created, we will be dead in 24 hours. That we need to make our children begin to understand that, see, when you walk on the street, when you go to church, when you go to your school, whatever you do, always remember there is someone out there that wants you dead. And I'm not saying this thing badly. I'm just saying we need to begin to teach our people, our young people, to be much more conscious of what is going on globally. Because when you look at, there's a document called NSSM 200. It was written by Henry Kissinger, the late Henry Kissinger, the former, I think it's former Secretary of State of the US and all of that. That document was created by the is the NSA, National Security Agency? Is that what they call it in the US? Yeah. It was created by that agency, and the sole purpose of that document is how to depopulate the world, especially Africans. And there are major targets there. They targeted Ethiopia, Nigeria, and I think is it Libya or whatever. So when you see conflicts in these countries that are written in that document, you think, oh, they are just fighting themselves in Nigeria. Boko Haram is just doing this, just doing that. They are just fighting themselves in the northern part of Ethiopia. But that's not the truth. The truth is that document itself is what is creating the problem because the reason why they created that document is to cause a depopulation. Because they are saying, if we allow the young people in Africa to grow or be empowered, they will challenge the Western world that is taking their mineral resources. That the only people that can challenge the Western world are the young people. But it's the same young people we are giving TikTok now. So they sit down on TikTok, they are dancing. They sit down on Facebook, they are dancing. They sit down on what's it called, Instagram, showing their nakedness and all of that. They are not thinking that there is a document, there's an organization seated that has created a document to kill them. They want every young African not to be thinking. Because the moment you don't think, you won't know that what is going on in your country was not caused by your government per se, but created by someone from the outside. Making sure you don't ever stand up against them to say, please leave our mineral resources alone. So they create all manner of organizations to keep the African child never sitting down to think. So there's always conflict in the DRC. There's always conflict in Ethiopia. Why? So that Africans will not sit down to develop their own country. Why? The ones that think they own the mineral resources want to come for them. What about Africans? For the past 200 years, everything has been taken away from Africa. What about Africans themselves? They bring in their whatever they do. It's annoying, I can tell you. It's very annoying how these things happen. It's like Africans are not important. It's like Africans don't have a say. It's like Africans they are not worth the oil. They don't know how to use uranium. They can't use plutonium. They can't use the cobalt. The cobalt has to be taken by Elon Musk or whoever is taking stuff like that. What about Africans? When will it be the turn of Africans to say, we own these things, we can use it for ourselves? Now we have more Africans that are learned, that are good engineers. They can engineer this thing. But we need a collaboration between the people and the government. Because if the government is in bed with the West, what would the people do? So there are lots of things that needs to be put into consideration. And we are asking that Africans, wherever you may be, I'm speaking from Kenya, or wherever you may be as an African, it's time for you to begin to think. The things happening in your country is not just happening because your country doesn't know how to rule. It's not happening because your country is full of idiots. No, it's not happening because your government don't know what is going on. They know exactly what is going on. But the people need to take a stand and say, government, you must be responsible for your people. But that's the point. Who is able among the African leadership to take a stand and say, see, even if I die for my people, it's part of the calling to be a leader. We don't need more leaders that are running around going to take photos in Russia, going to take photos in China. When will China come to Africa for the summit? When are we going to have a summit that calls America, calls everybody? Can you come and have the summit in Africa? When colonization started, when the slave trade started, when the partitioning started in Berlin, no African was there. Why is it that everything that is against Africa is done outside of Africa? So everybody seems to have a plan for Africa. But Africa doesn't have a plan for everybody. We have to change that. There has to be a balance. Every single policy that affects Africa is not taken in Africa. They don't sit down to do it in Africa. Even Africans themselves, African government, they go to Dubai, they go to London, they go to the fine streets that they like, which they cannot replicate in their own country, to go and have the conferences and the summits. When will you build your own hospitals so that your people can have health? And outside of hospital, we actually need to be looking at preventive medicine. When are we going to create a situation where we don't have to have our people in hospitals? That we have 1,000 cancer centers. It's not development. It doesn't make sense. We need to come to the place where we are now checking our food. Why is our food creating cancer? Why is there more infertility among our women? 50 years ago, the food that we were eating was not the food that we are eating now. Now, what we have now, the diseases that are crawling everywhere, it's not the same that was 50 years ago, meaning something has happened to our food. And we need to come to that place where we ask ourselves, how long shall we sit down and allow Bill Gates and Rockefeller, all of these people, to dictate how we eat? No, that shouldn't happen. So this is me talking to Africans. Anybody that cares to listen. It's your duty as an African to sit down, watch over your own family. Even if Bill Gates bring GMO to the supermarket, you have the responsibility not to buy it. Because if it's demand that controls supply, then let every one of us stop buying what they are selling. And their market will fall, will crash land. So we need to take that decision that, see, the world has been manipulated for too long. We need to take a stand and say, see, we're no longer following your rules. You can't kill everybody. You can't.
Wow. I am very proud to know you. I'm very proud of you. That was, do me a favor. I want to remind me of the report that Kissinger did. I should remember that. But if Grace, if you can get that and send that to me, because I'm going to read that report. I'm surprised that really went over my head. I was like, well, I missed that one. But I'm definitely going to read that because I think that's a big discussion. And you know, Sam, Black Americans are having a big discussion about Africa. There's a lot of people in America that's moving back to Africa and visiting Africa, and they're looking at all of the socioeconomic dynamics that are happening there, and they want to connect. I think what you're envisioning is happening, it's going to happen, and it's happening right now. So I'm very excited. I mean, but you just laid out that question to Africa is the same question I will be asking the African American, the Black American community here in America. That I would take what you said and ask the same question of the Black American in this country. I hope she can give me a snippet of that, because I'm going to show that to a lot of my friends in this country, because we're having the same exact conversation.
I think this
I can send you the
like what Samuel said. I think it could be applied to anyone in anywhere in the world, essentially.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
I can send you the PDF. I have the document, I think, in my laptop somewhere, NSSM 200, and there are also several articles where it has been broken down properly for people to understand that, see, there is a hand that is moving things across the globe. Even the story about sustainable development is another falsehood. The issue of climate change is another falsehood. So there's a lot of things that are moving at the same time that we need to pay attention to. We really, really need to pay attention, because you can't kill everybody, like I already said. So we need to come out en masse and tell these people, see, we see your games, but we can create a new system for ourselves. And by the way, African Americans,
this is really good.
Our people in the US, this is my message to our people in the US. We've been talking about this for years. That, see, if you want to come to Africa, especially the place that we are in Kenya. My wife is Kenyan and all of that. If you want to come to Africa as an African American or African in people of this is your motherland. There is nothing stopping you from coming. Yes, there might be a bit of issues of policies of immigration policy, whatever, but you just come. When you come, there are people that will welcome you in this continent. I'm very sure of that. I've been asking Pili Lawton to come to Kenya also. She has been skiving a bit. She doesn't just want to come. Well, she will come when it's time. But my message is to everyone. Africa needs every hand that can help to build it. Okay, because we've seen too much of unnecessary suffering that are not necessary. Because when you look at the way things are set in Africa. Africa technically is the food basket of the entire world. So people are developing their own nations at the back of the suffering of Africans. Why can't Africa now take a stand and say, see, no more. We are shaking off your yoke from our necks so that we can take a stand for ourselves. And we can't do these things alone if our brothers and sisters in the African diaspora and people of African descent won't come. You have to come back to the continent. We need all of the.
I'm
yeah,
we
need to come together.
Come to visit you. I'm going to come and visit you. So, I really am. I mean, I'm really intrigued. I mean, I knew we were going to have this conversation, but I didn't know it was going to be with you two, which I'm very pleased. PD said something I think that was very important. We have to get rid of the virus, colonialization virus, the imperialist virus, all of them. We have to get rid of them. We have to get rid of their thinking. We can't use any of their resources because Africa is the resource. And one thing I heard someone say, it was in a show that I was watching. The African leaders go to the doctors in Europe, send their money to Europe, send their kids to be educated in Europe. I mean, so if that's the case, we'll never be. If we're in bad shape. If you go to the hospitals, you entertain, you vacation in Europe, but you can't do it in your own country because you don't have the ecosystem or the ability to have that kind of tourism and that kind of banking system. And I got to tell you, I thought about that and I said, you know what, that is true. I mean, all of the African leaders, they get all their suits tailored in Europe. It's really interesting. That's why they like to go to Europe, Samuel. They don't want to have the Europe come to them. They want to go there so they can spend the resources of their country and sit at the table with people that don't value them.
But it's
stupidity.
But there are some good ones.
Oh yeah, I'm quite sure there are some. There are some good ones, but when you talk about good ones, you're talking about out of 95, out of 100%, 1%. I would like to get that up a little bit, from 0.5%, 1% to 20%. It's the same thing in this country too, and all the rest of the world. So I'm just talking about Africa right now. And this whole tag of Africa being corrupt, I really don't like to. I really want to push back on myself from using that because Africa is not corrupt. Individuals are corrupt. Africa is not corrupt. Yeah. The people in Africa are not corrupt.
That's the truth.
I mean, I think they're quite wise. I remember when I was working for Fort Rice News when we were covering the pandemic, there was this one African guy who I just can't remember his name. It escapes me. He was essentially working for the UN food program, and they were bringing them vaccines for free, but they were not bringing them food. So there were people dying from hunger, but they were being given the vaccine, because if I get the vaccine, I'm going to die of hunger anyway, right? Because it defeats the point of having the vaccine at all. So I think there is a lot of wisdom in ordinary Africans, but the elites, which most of them have been installed by the foreigners, they're the corrupt ones. They're the ones who are preventing the development of all those countries. And I mean, it's not just in Africa. I think most of the countries that have been victims of colonialism have gone through the same thing. And me coming from Serbia, which was part of former Yugoslavia, we've experienced that. And I remember as a kid, like we got bombed 3 times by the Americans in 9 years until the country was completely destroyed. And there was like, I don't know, a third of it left. My country was actually helping a lot of these African countries to free themselves. And we had a lot of Africans, especially from Ethiopia, Angola, and Mozambique, coming to our country and educating their own elites. And they were able to create a lot of their own independent elites. And of course, we were proud of that because we actually got new allies to fight against the colonialism that was trying to destroy us. Unfortunately, it got to us. But a lot of those African countries stayed independent. Of course, it was tough for them because there was a lot of attacks, and as all of you said, Ethiopia is going through through a very tough period because it is the oldest African country. It's been around for more than 2,000 years, and I think it's been the primary target precisely because of that, because you all mentioned the medieval African kingdoms. We can go further back in time to Numidia, to Nubia, to I don't know, Aksum, Kush, and all these other like ancient prehistoric kingdoms, which are much older than the Middle Ages. And if we look at the history of Western Europe, we see that these countries existed at pretty much the same time when we had the Roman Empire and the ancient Greece in Europe. So it was comparable in terms of civilizational development. And then you have Africa falling off because of the colonialism coming from the outside. And my country was also a victim of this. We're not Africa, but we might as well be, considering the fact how we were treated by the empire and the imperialism, essentially. So I think this is why a lot of countries that are outside of Africa understand how the Africans themselves feel, considering the fact that they've been victims of imperialism for centuries.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Haiti.
Yeah, well, yeah, Haiti. Haiti is still being punished for standing up against the British and the French. And the American government now is a clear, the American what the American government has done, I should say what the West has done to Haiti, all of the world should be standing with the Haitian nation. What has been done in Haiti is just, I can't even use that. It just upsets me even just bringing it up. But PD, I wanted to ask you a question about South Africa. You just had an election there just recently, and there's been a lot of turmoil there. I was telling my friends that South Africa is in the middle of a civil war. But after the election, what's going on there in South Africa now?
Well, I don't live there. Okay, I'm in the UK, but South Africa gets the negative press all the time. Hey, all the time. And South Africa is actually a very, very good place to live. A lot of people are moving back. People who left, people are moving back. And, you shouldn't believe all the negative press that you hear about it. So that's one thing. But they've recently had, first time ever, this government of national unity. So it's the parties, there's no one particular party that's in power. Now, this was predicted, interestingly enough, by Robin Rennick, the former British ambassador to South Africa, in a book he wrote in, I think, about 2018. He said that this would happen. And what you've got the ANC, which most people are familiar with as the Liberation Party, and the party that's been in power since Nelson Mandela came in. And you've got the Democratic Alliance, the DA. Now, the DA is what do we call them? It's the opposition party, but they are the very overt, the liberal party. So any party that's the Liberal Party, this is your direct conduit from London. Yep, so that's what the DA is. And I would say most South Africans, certainly most non-white South Africans, are acutely aware of the real nature of the Democratic Alliance. That being said, there are talking also about MK, so Jacob Zuma's party. Things are getting very, very interesting there because of the number of people who have left other parties to join MK, which is very interesting. Most recently, Floyd Shivumbu from the EFF, Economic Freedom Fighters, has left Julius Malema and the EFF to join.
Oh, he left the EFF.
MK.
He left the EFF. Wow.
Floyd Shivumbu, recently, which is fantastic news for MK, because Floyd Shivumbu, I'm no fan of the EFF, I'm no fan at all of Julius Malema, a deeply troubled man, and completely controlled by the forces of the London the London stamp on him. So anyway, Floyd Chivumbu is actually a very sound economic mind. He has a very good concept of the physical economy. He's talked at length about how the South African economy should be running so that they can create a situation where everyone has access, as it should be. In South Africa, this highly industrialized country, everyone has access to a good standard of living, which currently they don't, because South Africa is the world's most unequal society, believe it or not. So these vast riches that have been pulled out of the mines in South Africa since the time of Cecil John Rhodes, these have benefited, during apartheid, the white elite, and they've been benefited now under the last so many decades of ANC, a black elite and a small black middle class. You still have chronic unemployment. You have horrible poverty. And the problem is it's urban poverty. So urban poverty, as opposed to rural poverty, is you go hungry. When you're living in a rural area, you can grow your own food. You can always have something to eat. When you're living in an urban environment, that isn't possible. These people are landless. These people have very, there's big problems with urban poverty. So, and there's a lot of drugs. There's a lot of social problems. So, for Ubuntu, I'm actually particularly excited about that. Certainly didn't like Julius Malema, but Floyd Chivumbu has a lot of good stuff to say, and he comes across as having a very good comprehension of the physical economy, which is what Jacob Zuma and the BRICS, Russia, this is why these countries are doing well, because they're investing in the physical economy. So yeah, that's South Africa, but it's a strange thing. There's this cable, right? So Five Eyes. Now you tell me who are the members of the Five Eyes? It's Australia. Just tell me if I'm wrong, okay? Australia, Canada, Britain, America. Who's the fifth?
New Zealand.
I can't think. New Zealand. So now, I reckon South Africa is an undisclosed member of the Five Eyes. It's a member of the Commonwealth, but there's an underground cable that runs from the military base called Silvermine in the Cape all the way to London. It's on the seabed. That's an information cable. So I have this theory, and I don't know if I'm completely wrong, but South Africa is an undisclosed member of the Five Eyes. It's so intrinsic to the empire. If you think of the Oppenheimers, you think of Cecil John Rhodes, and the people who have been controlling, they do it through who's the governor of the Reserve Bank of South Africa, the treasurer. So this is how it's done, how the manipulation from the City of London is conducted. So I don't know. I wonder if it is. I wonder what is the purpose of that cable? It's interesting.
Well, I was disappointed in the ANC. I thought the ANC should have and could have done a better job for the people of South Africa. But I think I heard you say that they created just another level of elite Africans, South Africans.
Well, they kept with the neoliberalism. They kept with neoliberalism, didn't they? So they, this neoliberal economic system.
Yeah.
Yeah. But once you say that, then people start to think you have communist leanings, and it's not true. It's not the case.
Right. That's true.
Okay, let me say something. Let me quickly say something, so that, because I actually don't want us to end this conversation on any form of sad note, because it's easy to to be carried away with all of the madness going on in the world and then wear yourself out with all manner of sad things. But the thing I want to say is that to tell everyone out there are beautiful things going on in Africa. I can speak for Africa. I may not be able to speak for other places, but I live here, so I know. So if you want to join any of the movements that are making things happen in Africa, just come along. Let's just come on, just make connections, make contacts, especially to African Americans, especially to Africans in the diaspora, Africans, people of African descent. Stop listening to your government. Stop listening to those things you see online. Most of them are not true. Come on ground. Until you get here, you won't see how things really are. Okay, so because I live in a place called I live in the coast of Kenya, where you see several ancient places, ancient cities that have been here for thousands of years. You see the relics there. You see the building made of stones, made of blocks, made of all of that. So the history that we've been taught all these years was false. Things are here. So when you get to the ground, you'll be able to see how things really are. They tell us that our parents, our African parents, were naked on the street, or they live like monkeys in the forest. But now I'm looking at the places I live is a tourist environment. I'm seeing people come from Europe, coming to this same place that you say people are walking naked, and trying to live like we lived then. Okay, now we are now hearing of, okay, let's have sustainable buildings. Let's build with mud. Let's build with earth. Let's not use cement anymore. But that's what we've been doing all this while. You told us we're backward. So this is my own story to Africans. Don't let anybody tell you you're backward because you lived in mud huts. It's the mud huts that everybody is asking for now. They are saying because of climate change, let's now start to be using clay to build houses. We've been doing for thousands of years. You told us we are monkeys. So, but those narrative has to change. And the only way it can change is for Africans, come back home, come and see the real thing. Life is here. The greener pasture we're talking about is right here. So if you want to join any of the movements, if you want to know more about the things going on in Africa, or you want to be part of what is happening in Africa, the good things that are happening in Africa, just make contact. Just make contact. You can put a comment in the comment section of this chat. Ask questions. Make contact. You will always find someone that is ready to welcome you to the continent. Let something good happen. Let something good happen. Okay, let's make it happen.
And I want to add to that description, invitation that, so when I was, I just recently traveled to Spain and Portugal. And then when I described, that was my second travel, I described it to my family because I know that most people in Asia, like I know in the Philippines, they only think of African people like in Africa. Maybe they may think of African people in America, but I tell them that what I shared to them is don't expect that when you go to Spain, all you see are just Spanish people, like the fair color and all that. No, you don't. Just think that because of the diaspora that's been happening for good and bad reasons, because we always have to those people for us who believes that there's a God. So we believe that there's certain things that happens that were whether it's force or not force for the diaspora that it's good things. So I said when you imagine certain countries, think that there are so many people of different colors, different skin, different culture. So that's whenever I speak to when I visit my people in the Philippines, that's how I describe them, or else they will just have all that bias on how they think about African people, especially, and then these people. So I want to make sure that for those friends of mine who are listening and viewing this, that this is really what's happened. That we are all looking different in different countries. It's because just like my favorite analogy of people is like the wildflowers. Like for me, wildflowers in the wild is just beautiful. So Samuel and PD, would you like to talk about the fundraising that I also want people to know? It's for the Goma refugee crisis. Please.
Yes, thank you so much. We haven't had a chance to talk about DRC, what's happening in Congo, and particularly in the refugee camps around Goma. It's a very serious, critical situation. complete silence from the world media. Even, to put it in perspective, I was talking to someone from Uganda just the other day. She comes from a town which is not that far from Beni, which is a town in North Kivu in Eastern DRC. She had no idea at all of what was happening in Congo. This is somebody from the neighboring country. So there is a complete blanket of silence on what's happening in Congo. That's due to the fact that all our smartphones, our laptops, our computers, our space programs, our military armaments, or you name it, it's got a little bit of Congo in it, and that's the coltan or the cobalt. And that's why no one in the world has any idea of the absolute horrors that people in Eastern Congo are living with due to Rwanda being run by the West, by Britain, America, Israel, Belgium, for the mineral extractions on behalf of the corporate supply chain for mainly it's cobalt. So Samuel and I have started a GoFundMe. It's called Goma Refugees, Goma Refugee Crisis. It's under my name on GoFundMe. We're having a slow start, but we have managed 2 trips to the camps in Goma. The first trip we distributed food, clothing to 75 orphaned children. There's so many, they call them unaccompanied, basically orphaned kids in the camps. Samuel and I could show you many photos that our Congolese friends have taken, which are absolutely horrific and unbelievable that any child is living like this in 2024. So very, very distressing conditions. People are living in shelters which wouldn't even be considered a pig house. These are shelters that are not even waterproof. They are plastic sheeting, and Congolese people are trying to raise families, look after their children and their old people in these appalling conditions. So yeah, if you can help out, that would be really, really welcome. There's a lot of information on Msingi Africa and on the Msingi Africa TV channel. Samuel and I have made a video, so we would really appreciate that if you can help out, and we can run another mission to the Goma camps. I don't know if Samuel would want to add anything.
What I will add is that, and this is not we begging. We are not paupers trying to beg international sympathy. No, that's not what we're doing. We are using this platform to also show the international people, the global citizenship, that there is a problem that is going on in DRC, not because DRC people, not because the Congolese people created those problems, but because the people that want to create your electric vehicles, the people that are creating your iPhones, the ones that are creating your tablets, the ones that are creating your jet fuel or whatever they are creating, are the ones destabilizing the countries in Africa to have access to those natural resources. So this is not a conflict of Africans fighting themselves. No, we need to make that very clear, and I'm sounding it so that I can speak to everybody like, we are not begging for money. We are actually saying, tell your government to stop what they are doing in DRC. Because there's a video I watched of a young girl from DRC about last month or thereabout. And this girl was crying. She said, since she was born into this conflict. So she was asking, what did Congolese people do to the world? She was saying, you people brought Ebola to us. You gave us HIV. You brought Mpox. You brought M23, all of this conflict. Why is it only DRC? So I wrote a comment and I said, the only reason why your DRC is in trouble is because your country sits upon trillions of dollars worth of mineral resources. That's the only reason. You've not done anything wrong. You didn't do anything to offend anybody. All you did was because you were created and placed in a place that has mineral resources, which is not your fault. So we are not asking for these donations because we are begging. We are not begging. We are only saying we are making this platform open so that you can begin to see beyond the donations and begin to ask questions. What is the American military doing in DRC? Why are mercenaries everywhere? What are they doing in our countries? So you see this conflict happen. You think it's Africans, they are too stupid, they can't control themselves, so they fight. That's not what is going on. The other day, there was a video that was shared on YouTube where UN drone, there's a drone, I think it's UN drone or whatever, was carrying gold. It was branded as UN. It's a vehicle for UN. Where was it taking the gold to? The thing crashed land and they looked inside, the cities, the locals look inside the drone, they saw gold bars in it. They are moving gold bars from the DRC to wherever they are moving it to. Why the people are suffering in their houses. So this is not a call for just let's make donations. No, this is also a call for, if you are in the parliament of your country and you're listening to this, ask your government questions. If you are close to politicians, ask them questions. Where are you people getting your mineral resources that is funding, that is powering our electricity? How can France have constant electricity? But Congo, where the what's it called? The mineral resources that's powering that electricity doesn't have power. It's not fair. For hundreds of years, these people have been under the same suffering. What's his name? King Leopold of Belgium did his own part for 30 years, subjected these people to terror because of natural resources. It's still ongoing right now. It has to stop. So we are not begging for money. Let me make it very clear. PD and I are not begging for money. We are making this platform a way of telling the people that, see, there is a problem. You need to step up and make things happen. Young people have been in DRC. Some of them are maybe, let's say, 40 years old. From the day they were born till now, it's been conflict. It's been fighting. It's been shooting. No peace. Why? Not because they did anything wrong. They didn't commit any crime. It's because of natural resources. So now that the world is calling for green energy. At what cost? The world is calling for green energy, calling for electric vehicles, calling for this, calling for that. At what cost? DRC. At what cost? Countries in Africa. So when you see European youth on the street, you ask them, what do you think about Africa? Africa is a shit place. It's too dirty. It's poverty. I'm looking at them. Do you understand what you're talking about? You don't understand what you're talking about. Your fathers will not tell you that the things you're enjoying in your Europe is coming from here. But we can no longer allow that to happen. So this is our call to everyone. If you can write articles, if you can make videos, whatever you can do, start to make research about what is going on in the DRC. Point out these problems and let your government know. Let your people know that what is going on in Africa is not because Africans are monkeys. It's not because Africans are lunatics. They want to fight themselves. That's not what is going on. What is going on is because someone is making this thing the way it is. And it has to stop. And the only way it can stop is when the people take a stand to say enough is enough. Thank you.
Amen. Any more last words? Because, I feel like we need to continue on another time, because it will really be, the situation in the world is ongoing. So thank you so much, Samuel, PD, and everyone. And anyone last words, please?
Can you, Samuel, can you send, or can someone send me your email and you and PD's email? Because I would like to continue the conversation with you. That's number one. Number two, any literature or anything that you think I need to be reading, so I can have a deeper conversation about what's happening in the region, what's happening in Africa. Please share it with me, because, I need to know that, because I think, in my life, I have a global perspective of all of the things and interconnectivity of it all. And I want to make sure I'm talking about the right thing and putting the right focus on the right issues. So if you can do that for me, I appreciate it.
I'll be very happy to connect all of you. And it really warms my heart. And I hope we can make a difference with using this platform. Please, you're all welcome again and again.